Okay, let's get into your top ideas now. ProPicks is brought to you by ATB Financial. With $62 billion in assets, ATB Financial is powering possibilities for more than 820,000 financial services clients in Alberta and beyond. ATB's capital markets arm is a full-service investment dealer that offers investment and corporate banking, sales and trading, institutional research, and risk management. Visit atb.com/inthemoney for more information. Okay, your first top idea is short soybeans. You referenced that Donald Trump has tweeted many times or posted on X now, many times about soybean prices of all things.
Yeah. Big, like a big driver of votes in the US, right? There's a lot of farmers in the Midwest, midterms coming up next year. China historically has been one of the largest importers of soybeans globally. If we go back 10 years, all their beans that were imported came from the US. Brazil and Argentina have been growing their bean production, and China has diversified meaningfully where they get beans from today. There's been a lot of, I think, non-commercial or speculative flow into the soybean market under the assumption that we're going to send 20 million tons of beans.
Because that's part of the trade deals.
And that's definitely something that President Trump talks about quite a bit. We don't think that the amount of beans that ultimately go to China is anywhere near what is being priced in the market. So tactically, this is a very sort of kind of, 2-month trade. We think beans do trade lower. Balances in the US are comfortable. Balances in China are comfortable. If you run like your stocks to use versus price, the price is probably too high in the tune of 8 to 10%. So we have like a short in beans in the fund today.
And it's probably a hard trade for a retail investor to execute, but just for perspective, soybeans have gone up from the August lows up about 13%. And so you're basically calling for some of that to come out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see beans with a sub 10 handle at some point over the course of the next 6 weeks.
A call that probably has broader interest among our viewers is your second idea, which is long oil. And again, all of these have time horizons. So your soy call is short term, 2 to 3 months, as you said. Your long oil call is over the next 6 to 12 months. And if you've been listening to the whole podcast, not just this Pro Pick segment, you'll have heard Hussein say, I think oil could drop down to a 4 handle. But you also are calling for long oil over 6 to 12 months. So walk me through that.
Yeah, so I hope that the short-term bearishness comes to fruition because I'd like to get long with that sort of low 50, high 40 handle. Balance is oversupplied. Today, our oversupply is 3 million barrels a day. We're building oil on water, record amounts of oil on water. Production is still growing. Demand is firm, but production is outpacing that. And that's particularly true in the first quarter of next year. So I think the low is probably sometime in the first half of next year. But Amber, I think that at some point in the middle of next year, we're going to start looking, the consensus will start looking at 27 balances, 28 balances. We don't have that supply growth that we've had in 25 and the first part of 26. And I can't bring oil supply online overnight. There's going to be, I think, renewed focus on OPEC spare capacity and the low level of spare capacity that is present there. And inventories, notwithstanding the fact that they're building, are still relatively tight. And I think this is why the market is like we're looking at these sort of lofty projected balances, but are loath to sell it pretty aggressively. First, because it hasn't worked. For the last 16 months, guys have said, this wasn't our view, but guys were quite bearish oil. That didn't materialize. But I think that inventories are building today. You can see it on the water. You can see it by looking at freight rates. So ultimately, we like oil, but I think you got to wait, 3 to 6 months before the lows are in.
Well, then that begs the question of what's a good oil price for you? If you go down to 40 or even top or early 50s, that's still, about $10 a barrel coming out of the price.
Yeah.
So then, going back up to 60 seems like a good day.
Yeah. And I think ultimately by the end of 26 into 27, we'll probably be trading in the high 70s, low 80s.
Okay.
I think the sort of replacement or long run marginal cost of production is somewhere north of 70, but we have to overshoot because I have to encourage the company not to buy back their stock and instead to deploy capital, right? We've seen some M&A, and that underscores how challenging it is to grow production. If I'm willing to buy you as opposed to going to grow greenfield production, I think that's a testament to how challenging it is to grow production. We haven't talked about this in the last 10, 15 years because we haven't tried to do it. Once we start doing it, the focus on, resource nationalism, the ability to grow production is going to come back to the fore, and I think that's ultimately constructive.
Longer term call is on copper, 5 to 7 years. And again, with that lens of you spend a lot of time in micro, and that's really what matters near term. But you think the story that everybody says about electrification and needing copper to build all these data centers, that is going to propel copper higher 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, and ultimately, like we're trying to move away from kind of conventional fuel towards power. So if I think about energy mix globally, 10 years from now, more of our energy is going to come from power than it is from oil, et cetera, coal. I have to move that power. I have not invested in the power stack in North America, in Europe, for the better part of the last 20 years. That requires a tremendous amount of copper, and copper takes forever. If I can find it, it takes forever to produce. And that's where the balance, if I look at copper inventories globally, they're extremely tight today. And there isn't a sort of meaningful copper project on the horizon. That's an issue.
Hussein, it's been an absolute pleasure. Maybe you've convinced me. I'm going to take a look at the portfolio.
I'll send you the ticker.